Alright, just finished up on the dyno. This one needs to go on the dyno tomorrow. And it's a little different. It's a right-hand drive Del Sol. I'll probably have a whole bunch of videos coming up on that one. But getting ready to get started on now is going to try and bring this Prelude back to life. Remember Preludes? More importantly, do you remember these wheels? So now that it's up in the air, this thing has no muffler on it. And it's just like unbearably loud. So here's where the dilemma starts, is the way that this tube here is just kind of run under the car. Like if you put a muffler there, it's going to look ridiculous. So I'm going to have to, at the very least, cut it back here. There's no flanges in the whole exhaust, so I have to add some flanges. And then I was actually told that I made this downpipe. And I'm going to go ahead and say that that's not the case. And then up at top, I can't see here, but up at the actual turbo, the downpipe's broken. And then this downpipe, what's currently here, is really low. And then it's also like pushed all the way over to this side for some reason. So I think I might just have to remake all of this. I'm going to have to call customer and see if that's in his budget. But any other way that I do it, it's just going to kind of be half-assed, and I really don't want to do that. The shop that originally did this, like, cut the front cross member and just welded these things in there. It's all crushed bent and smashed in. And the dump tube is just shooting like right at it. And it touches and it rattles. So I have to remake that as well. And here's where the downpipe, I can't say I've ever seen this before, is like blown apart. Unfortunately, this turbo is on borrowed time. Alternator belt is, I don't know if you can see that, shredded, about to fall off. These catch can lines are not welded or anything, they're just threaded. And they're dumping oil all over the front of the block. I don't know if you can see it down there, but I'm gonna have to degrease and try and clean this up the best I can. Ironically, this little battery here isn't being used, but the catch can is mounted to the bracket for it, so we'll have to relocate that. This little tiny power wire is what's going to the starter from the fuse box. So as you can imagine, it cranks extremely slow. It doesn't want to start half the time, and kind of surprised I just caught the fuse box on fire. Tons of butt connectors. I'm going to try and reroute some of this vacuum hose a little nicer. But this intercooler pipe down here, you can see this bend was kind of going this way. So rather than cutting it like back here on the tangent of the bend, they just cheated it back down that way. Long story short, that makes me borderline have a seizure, so I'm going to have to fix that. Pointing out what I've pointed out already is probably close to double of what we have to work with. So I think going to make a phone call and see what he wants to do, what he doesn't want to do, and go from there. But either way, I'll make that phone call real quick. And I'm going to do a little parts inventory on this. And I'm going to order a few $1,000s worth of materials, and then we will get started. Hey, what's up, man? It's Joe at Tempest. What's going on, man? So I finally got a chance to kind of take a look at this and see what... Okay, yeah. So basically, like, the primary dilemma here is that your downpipe is just, like, it needs to be remade. There's kind of no work around that. It's broken on the top side and on the bottom side. And then, like, the center section of the exhaust, it's not centered in the exhaust tunnel. So that means if we make a new downpipe that aligns with that exhaust, that the downpipe is going to be kind of doofy looking. And then once you get to the rear section of the car, like, if you just put a muffler in the piping that they have, again, everything's off-centered and not straight and not parallel and everything else. So I don't know what you're looking to spend on that side of it is, but to make it the way I would want it to be, like, we kind of need to remake all of it. Downpipe, exhaust, and dump tube. So basically all new, all of that stuff. You're probably gonna be somewhere around $2,000.
We have to get money. We have no choice.
and that will all be stainless with stainless filler wire. So basically, like, you have some stainless on there now, but it's all welded with mild steel MIG wire. So all the welds are all rusted and stuff. So again, like, we'd weld these new muffler in there and everything else, and then it'd just be a matter of time until it broke. But, you know, again, if you need to keep costs down, then we can kind of pick and choose what we do or don't do, or if you want to do all of it, we can do that too. Yeah, that's, I mean, honestly, man, like, what you currently have will, if it's working, it's working. You know, that's more cosmetic than anything else. The other one would sound the same. Yeah, the one that has a blow off valve on it, I'd leave that one. And then the other one, like, kind of makes me almost have a seizure. So I'd like to fix that. Like, that's just like fabricating basics, like day number 1. Like, that's like golden rule is you don't do that. So we'll take care of that. So that way they had to have. It's literally the only logical explanation. It's, you know, the guy's first day, maybe it's some high school kid or something. I don't know. Everybody's got to start somewhere, but with what you paid them to do all of that, that's not okay. But fixing that pipe will be pretty inexpensive. It's just, you know, 190-degree elbow manipulated should take care of that. Not going to do the blow-off valve or the cold side intercooler pipe, but it looks like we're going to go ahead and do the rest of it. One of the trickier parts of these situations is once you get diving in, you always find additional stuff. So we'll see. And then this is actually going to go in the dyno too. I forgot about that. So he wanted to put new plugs in it. I think just for my own sanity, I'm probably going to do a compression and or leak down test. I think it's just exhaust leak because it seems to run pretty good, but it sounds like it's got a mist to it. And this it's been running for quite a while. You can just tell by the wheels on this thing that this has been an ongoing project for a long time. So maybe we'll start with that next, because if the motor's no good, then there's probably no reason to go any further with any of it. But I think that's okay. That's just me being a weirdo. So here's why this is all blown up. That's the fit up between the two flanges. So when you tighten it up, it'll pull it in, but there's so much stress on it, it just blows this thing up. So there's just an endless amount of room to route all this stuff differently. So we're going to remake all that. So I just got to measure and see how big of a muffler I can get back here, as he wants to make this one quiet. It's got like basically brand new everything on it. And the sway bar always makes making the exhaust a little tougher because it's right in the way. It looks like there's a lot of room now because it's off the ground. But once you lower it back down, this thing's going to come up here. So the tricky part will be that it's not that bad. It just takes a little more effort than if it wasn't there. And it looks like I can get at least a resonator up front, so I'm going to go ahead and do that too. So it looks like I'm going to be working on these cars basically side by side. So it's going to make my life easier from a video and editing standpoint if I just kind of pair it all together. So let's take a look at this thing. So this thing's got all kinds of nice parts on it. There's some issues, however. Basically, there's no fan or fan shroud on right now, so I have to figure that out. But the biggest hurdle is this is supposed to be an AC compatible manifold with an AC compatible downpipe, but it's been an ongoing situation before it made it here. So I need to somehow make all of that work. I don't know if you can really tell, but that charge pipe needs to be made there, and it's going to hit everything. And then the oil line is basically in the way of where the charge pipe needs to go as well. And he has an intercooler that is supposedly like back door on one side, but there's nowhere for anything to go through there. And definitely not going to work on this side, so there might be a situation with the intercooler as well. And it's got a wire harness on it, I think. And we need to make intercooler piping, finish making the exhaust, and I think past that there's some other odds and ends, but the primary thing is going to be installing AEM Infinity and tuning that. And he doesn't have any of it, but wants to add like rear wheel speed sensors and set up traction control and all of that good stuff. Again, we have a budget on this one that I think we're going to be on the top side of. Just for the record, that's the way it always goes. Always and forever. Any car, any project, it doesn't matter. You always want more than kind of what's available, but this one definitely have enough to at least jam through most of it, and then we can have a conversation for another day about adding some sensors, from some safeties and things of that nature. One downside is we need to add a catch can to this, and the valve cover is just freshly painted. So I'm gonna have to grind that off and weld some fittings, and then there's all kinds of stuff over there, but somehow I gotta make a battery fit. And I think that's about it for this one. Again, on this one, I've been doing this long enough that you can tell which cars are gonna have things pop up and which ones aren't, and for sure there's gonna be some stuff that's gonna go on this one. But it has all kinds of nice parts. The limiting factor is gonna be we're just running on 93 octane. It's got a Garrett, maybe it looks like a 35R. I'd have to look at paperwork to see exactly what it is, but I think it's got tuner 2 cams in it, so we should probably flirt with 450, 500 on 93. And that side of it's all straightforward. I've done that a billion times. The downside is this car is right-hand drive, and I'm right-handed, and if I tried to shift this thing left-handed, I'd probably just smash it through a brick wall somehow. Maybe I'll have the owner of the car come down and drive it around, and I can push buttons from the other seat. All right, it's been a few days, finished up a handful of things, getting ready to get started on the Prelude and what's the other one? Del Sol. And got an order from, shipment from Tycon came in, a whole bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, it was a 3-box shipment. 2 of the boxes showed up, and waiting on UPS for the 3rd, which has the mufflers and resonators. So I'm going to start on the Prelude downpipe, and then hopefully if I don't see that package today, maybe it'll show up tomorrow. But of course, with Christmas being right around the corner, no doubt everything would get delayed even further. There's a few parts dropped off for the Del Sol, tile wastegate, tile blow-off valve. Unfortunately, it was sold an intercooler that is dual back door. The easiest thing to do is going to be to sell that intercooler and either make one or pick up another one. So I think where I'm going to start now is removing this downpipe and exhaust. I can cut anything or get started actually fabricating anything. I need to clean up in here. Really, I need to take like 3 days off and just do nothing but clean and throw everything away. You just accumulate so much stuff when you have a shop. Like, you don't want to throw it away because you might use it one day, and then you know how that goes. You throw it away and 4 minutes later you actually need it. So, but I just hate it when it's a mess in here. These dirt bikes and 4-wheelers blast up and down the parking lot all day, every day, and it absolutely just, I can't tolerate it. They go like 200 miles an hour and they're gonna kill somebody. I 100% am going to move shops because of them. Just gotta find somewhere else to go. Basically, all of you have asked me to do builds or basically this, show them more of working on projects, and I don't know how to make this not boring. I guess since it's what I do all day, every day, that just seems super repetitive. Like building this downpipe is going to be like, all right, measure this, cut that, weld that, and then we got to do an exhaust. It's exactly the same thing, and then do basically all the same stuff on the Del Sol. So I'm not sure what my game plan is to try and make this somewhat entertaining to watch, but there's that blown up V-band. Throw that in the dumpster. So anyways, let me try and come up with a game plan as far as how I want to do this downpipe. Actually, there's so much room that I think my 3-year-old daughter could make a downpipe for this one. So Let me go grab some materials. So if you use V-band clamps from Vibrant, never use like any type of an impact or whatever on them. So you get 1 or 2 uses and then you'll blow all the threads out. These ones from Stainless Bros have much larger diameter stud, and they hold up pretty well. Now at the same time, I'm not going to hammer it, you know, hammer it on there and blow it up, but definitely can get away using tools that save time. So you can see I can basically drive a car through there, but I'm going to try and hug the manifold relatively tight. I'll probably come in like right through here, and that'll give us plenty of room to run the dump tube where it's not just literally resting on the cross member and rattling to death. Now I have a few options as far as what we can use. So basically, I don't know how you can see through the packaging, but tight radius elbows with no legs, short radius elbows, or long radius elbows rather. I have some of those with and without legs, and we have some just traditional mandrel bends, and we'll get a flex joint past the oil pan, connect it to the rest of the exhaust of the V-band, and then once we get into the actual exhaust, we're going to do a resonator and muffler, and probably for the rear section probably just do maybe like a slash cut 3-inch tube out the back. I like my stuff to be stealthy. I'm not a huge fan of big giant exhaust tips, with the exception of GTRs. If the car kind of requires it to fill in like body panels and stuff, then you don't really have much of a choice. So I don't know if you've ever seen a GTR with small exhaust tips, but it looks really goofy. I'm going to start off with a long radius elbow with no legs. Clicks right into place. And basically goes exactly where I want it to go, so that'll be nice and easy. And then we're going to do a straight section, and then we got to go under the oil pan. So it's a huge unorganized mess over here, which is not very typical of me when I'm welding all the time, but I probably welded 3 things this year, so it looks like a war zone. But basically I use a Miller Dynasty. This is a 200. Basically on DC, I just keep it at 100 amps for everything. I don't like having to bounce back and forth and move this setting and that setting, and it gets annoying. So if you keep it at 100%, then it's kind of like a gas pedal in a car. You know, 10% is 10 amps, 50% is 50 amps, and 80% is 80 amps. So it's nice and easy. It's not on exactly 100 because I don't care that much, and I just kind of swing the dial, especially when I'm going back and forth between AC and DC. As you'll see, that will build like big huge exhausts or complete turbo manifolds, and everything's tacked together. And then once everything's tacked, they'll weld it all, which if that works for you, that's fine. But I hate flipping around big huge things and welding them like that. I'd prefer to just do each weld individually. So sometimes if it's a production piece and you're building a jig, you know what's happening. But for something like this, obviously it's a one-off. Sometimes I'll maybe go 1 or 2 steps out and then even break tacks apart, weld things, tack it back together. And I kind of change up how I do it every time. A lot of it just really depends on the car, the space, and what kind of mood I'm in. But let's throw a couple tacks on this real quick. Looks like we need about 9 inches, so.
That's what she said!
Just mark it there. Go a little further past. Now cut it. Blade on the saw is completely dead. Maybe I'll replace it in the morning. This is what it looks like from underneath. So let's look over there. At first glance, it sort of looked like it was a possibility that would just be a 90 there and then a 90 here under the pan, but that never works out ever. So it's going to be a 90 and then, I don't know, maybe like a 25 or 30 degree bend. Well, actually, where my thumb is here, 25, 30 degree bend, and then 90 it. And then the objective is going to be to get it pretty centered under the oil pan as high as it can go. and then centered with the exhaust tunnel. This really makes life easier. The Sequence Manufacturing, Tycon Industries. God damn it! Go the hell away! Elbow cutting jigs. So basically it's going to hold your elbow and allow you to cut it without obviously messing it up or whatever, but you can also slide this in and out, and it's going to keep the blade right on the tangent of the bend, so when you cut it, it's still going to remain perfectly round. And then using horizontal saw like this, you can just start the cut, drop the blade, and walk away, and when you come back, the cut will be finished. I could not function or live without this thing. And I'll throw a link in the description too for a code. If you go to sequencemanufacturing.com, you can actually get a discount there, but it only works if you subscribe. The visor on my saw is worn out, so I got a C-clamp on there right now until I get around to fixing it again. Now you got a perfectly square, perfectly round cut. And just use like a digital protractor and you can make the same cut every single time. Love these things. One of the main reasons I use such high amperage all the time on DC, so I can have these little tiny tack welds. You can hit it with the amperage that you need in a very, very short period of time. So if you ever need to break a tack weld off, it's nice and easy to do. Oh, these things too. This is top secret stuff. Don't tell anybody about that. These things are great. So here's basically what we got so far. Drops down. Actually, I guess from this angle it would be kind of like this. It'll drop down, kicks over that way, 90s, and then straightens itself back out. And there's still, it's still going to be coming under the oil pan slightly at an angle. And then once it gets past that, we'll kick it back straight, and then that's where our flex joint will go. Really cool, like silver gold combo on this weld. Wish I could make them all look like that. That's awesome. There's what a back purge weld looks like. Definitely can work with that. These are probably my least favorite thing in the world to weld. And the stainless bros ones are pretty good out of the box, but it still helps if you just flatten like the surface here on the belt sander. It helps with welding it. The quick, cheap, and easy way to do this, I don't like welding flanges to these, so I always insert a tube, you know, even if it's pretty short, and then weld your V-band flange. Now the quick, cheap, easy way to do this is, again, just weld straight tube, weld your V-band flange, but then you put your clamp on, and that's actually going to become lower than this. And this is relatively low considering the car is pretty low, but it can't go any higher. So if you come back here, I don't know how well the camera will show it, but you can see that the exhaust is way lower than the exhaust tunnel here. So what I'm going to do is probably come out straight a little bit and then actually come up and then, you know, go this way. So I'm not exactly sure where I'll put the V-band. If you can't tell yet, I just kind of wing all this stuff like as I'm going. So that's going to be the next step. Everybody always asks like how you know where to cut it. And the answer is you don't. You just kind of eyeball it. I'm going to go with right about there. So throw that in our fancy tool, cut it, and see if it works. So we're kicking it up, and then basically we want to try and make this parallel with the earth. And you could technically do some math here and figure out what that angle needs to be, but there's a very high likelihood that if I do math, I'm going to completely screw it up. I've gotten pretty good at eyeballing things over the years, so this is my preferred method. So basically that's pretty flat, so we'll mark it, and you absolutely positively have to make sure you maintain cutting the bend on like the tangent of the bend. Like you need your center point, your center line, and you need to follow that. So if you just were to cut this like that, then you can see that it's not right. It's going to look stupid, and probably most importantly, it's not going to be round anymore. So when you try to mate it up to your next cut, it's not going to fit at all. So don't do that. And that's basically as high as it can comfortably go without having to. So if you go too high on this side, then when you get back there, you have to drop it back down. It just kind of defeats the purpose at that point. But I'm gonna weld all this up. Guess I'll weld. Who knows, maybe I'll just weld all of it. Again, I'll see how I feel. Oh good, more dirt bikes. A little before and after. All right, that's gonna do it for today. I gotta go pick my daughter up from daycare, and I'll throw a O2 bung in that tomorrow. Throw it on the car, probably knock out the downpipe, and then if the resonators show up, hopefully I can bang the exhaust out tomorrow. And if not, then I got 3,800 other things I gotta do, so we'll see what happens.